Product provided by 1010 Games. I'm sorry. I hate Funko Pops. The collectible figure line with their distinctive big, stupid, dumb heads and big, vacant, beady eyes have haunted my nightmares for years now. I may not be as big of a hater as a lot of folks on the internet. I own a few Funko Pops, albeit mostly because they were given to me as gifts, and I'll even admit there are some that I find quite charming, but any goodwill that I am willing to give is always instantly countered by the culture of overconsumption radiating off the Funko brand. Everywhere you go, there's hundreds of them, ranging from infinite variations of whatever Star Wars character to the most obscure background character from the latest season of that show your dad likes. Everyone gets a figure, and Funko wants you to collect all of them like the greedy consumerist pig you are. And even outside of the Pops, they have their hands in so many pots that it's almost a safe assumption that whatever plastic garbage you can buy at your local Hot Topic has probably been produced by Funko. As a gamer, one of my favorite pastimes growing up was taking a trip to the local GameStop. But over the years, I've noticed a trend. Where once stood fun video game paraphernalia or knockoff anime figures, now stands wall-to-wall Funko Pops. And this isn't even a problem exclusive to GameStop. I've watched for years as basically anywhere that caters to us geeks and gamers has been taken over by the ever-expanding bobblehead parasite that is Funko. So with that context considered, you can imagine my reaction when I was specifically reached out to cover Funko Fusion, a video game starring the Funko brand and the various intellectual properties that they get to call their own. I have no shame in admitting that I only said yes to this in order to make fun of the game. I pictured this being a cool 10 minutes of joking around, but ultimately coming to the conclusion that it's completely harmless for what it is. But then I actually played Funko Fusion, and I found what might be the worst game ever made. Is that an exaggeration? Maybe, but there is not a hint of hyperbole in my voice when I tell you that Funko Fusion is a perfect encapsulation of everything wrong with the current state of gaming, fandom, and even wider pop culture. Let's talk about it. Funko Fusion starts off with a simple message. Everyone is a fan of something, prompting the player to choose their favorite character from one of 7 different franchises: Jurassic World, Scott Pilgrim, The Umbrella Academy, He-Man, Hot Fuzz, The Thing, and Battlestar Galactica. Me personally, I chose He-Man from He-Man because I like that video of him singing in front of the rainbow. You stumble onto this fox guy named Foxo, you set him free, fight some guys, and he lets you into the Funko Wonderworld, the center of all creation, headed by Freddy Funko, with very natural transitions between cutscenes. After a second of peace, a skeleton monster bursts into the scene, transforming into the evil Eddie Funko, who proceeds to quite violently murder our new friend. At the ready, nice and steady, Freddy fights Eddie, but the petty Eddie knows that he is no match for Freddy, so quick to be dead, he grabbed the crown off his head, which shattered into a million different pieces with a multiversal spread, infecting Foxo, who we once thought dead, to turn into a big monster, Purple Bled, as if we didn't already have enough problems ahead. We fight, we win, and from here, our mission is clear. We have to go through each of the 7 worlds mentioned earlier and rid the world of Eddie's influence, retrieving crowns, doing puzzles, fighting enemies, and pointing at the screen whenever they reference something you like. Each of the worlds has 5 missions, and each of those missions has multiple crowns to collect, Easter eggs to find, and you are highly encouraged to replay levels when you unlock new characters and mechanics to find new things in old locations. And if this sounds familiar, that's because this is essentially a Lego game. Even the developer, 1010 Games, is made up mostly of staff that left Traveler's Tales after Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Saga's development cycle was a total nightmare. One could look at this as Funko's take on the Lego formula with a lot of the talent that made Lego games so fantastic in the first place. But even with them, there was no saving this game. Right off the bat, I find this pedestalizing of Funko quite frankly cringe. The best but least scientific way I can put it is that Lego games are Lego games, but Funko Fusion is a Funko game. You know what I mean? Freddy Funko is portrayed as some badass god of the universe. Funko Wonderworld is apparently the center of all artistic freedom, and all the characters sprout out of true-to-life Funko boxes, going so far as to include characters on the boxes who aren't even in the game. The way they plaster the Funko branding everywhere is so cynical. The entire thing feels more like an advertisement than it does a video game. There's even real-ass ads for both KFC and Loungefly littered throughout the place. Which, by the way, those Loungefly bags that also permeate endlessly through store shelves, turns out they're also owned by Funko. I told you, they're everywhere. I was already predisposed to hate this game, but this backdrop of endlessly reminding you of the Funko brand, because remember, this game was made by Funko, and you can buy Funko Pops, made all of the other issues this game has under the surface ever more present. And there are a lot of issues. Each of Funko Fusion's 7 worlds follow the same formula. 4 standard levels with a big boss fight level at the end, all loosely adapting the story of the original property, with every one of the worlds getting its own core item that's like its gimmick. Like in the He-Man world, you get these portals, in the Umbrella Academy, you get this gramophone, so on and so forth. For the most part, these items are what enable you to unlock the collectibles throughout the game. And once you unlock something in one world, you can continue to bring it with you into each of the other worlds, even on a first-time playthrough. Problem being, after their initial world, these items are only available to be purchased in these vending machines with vinyl, the game's main currency. And you know, this would be fine if they didn't require vinyl for literally everything. You need vinyl for these items, which sometimes you need multiples of. Every level has a crown that can only be obtained by spending an obscene amount of the stuff, and most egregiously, you need to spend vinyl in order to respawn after your character dies. And you will be dying a lot because this game loves to throw tons and tons of enemies into every set piece. And while combat is a staple of a game like this, it is so poorly implemented here. Gone are the days of Skywalker Saga's Devil May Cry-esque combos, and now every character has a floaty melee combo and some kind of gun. But you may notice one of the most distinctive parts of a Funko Pop is its big, dumb, stupid head. So in a third-person shooter environment, when you zoom in to take shots, the Funko Pop's big, dumb, stupid head takes up like 1/3 of the screen. Are you telling me there was no workaround for this? And the melee combos don't fare much better. It feels like enemies barely react when you use them, and the lack of health bars for anything makes it hard to judge whether or not you're actually doing any damage, which is especially annoying because some enemies are only susceptible to range damage or vice versa, and that nuance is very easily lost when all damage is communicated to you like this. And if all of that wasn't enough to sour me on this game's foundation, you also have lives to worry about. If you die 3 times, you have to restart the level, which is a real problem when there's 1,000 infinitely respawning enemies, making this game into a bullet hell at all times. And having to restart these levels is incredibly annoying because these levels are long. So many levels just have tons and tons of open air and empty space, but there's no intention behind any of it. It's just big for big's sake. And within the worlds, everywhere just kinda looks like everywhere else, making it really easy to lose any sense of navigation. Now remember those items that I mentioned at the beginning of this rant? All of them have to be picked up and moved around. And when you're carrying one, you move slower and can't do any attacks. This leaves you to be an open target moving around these big levels, leading you to take more damage, meaning you die and have to respawn, so you lose vinyl and it becomes more difficult to get all the collectibles if you don't just straight up have to restart the level, which could mean upwards of an hour of progress lost. Even the most basic of ideas brought to the table here don't seem like they were properly thought through. Like, I love that they licensed the music from the individual properties to use in the levels, but they failed to account for the fact that these levels are really long, so they just kind of loop indefinitely. I hope you like Istanbul, not Constantinople by They Might Be Giants. You're going to be hearing a lot of it. This game has a lot of different mechanics at play, some of which can work in isolation, but it feels like there was no consideration spent on figuring out how these mechanics were going to play with each other. It seems pretty clear to me that this game was made with the intention of being played in co-op. Every world features 4 characters, and picturing 4 people all running around in a big squad, shooting stuff up and providing cover for each other while doing puzzles, dividing and conquering in these big sprawling levels, I can see a timeline where this is much more manageable. But that's launching later in this game's roadmap. All I have is this. And ignoring the fact that they decided to launch this game in what is quite possibly its least playable state, which in itself is hilarious, I don't know how fun it would be to play this game with 4 people. Most of these worlds have one central character whose character-specific abilities they need in order to progress. Only Adam, Prince of Eternia, can power up to He-Man and destroy these things in the He-Man universe. Only the guitar characters can interact with the amps in the Scott Pilgrim world. Only number 5 can teleport throughout the Umbrella Academy levels. Every character has so much effort put into their animations, but in a single player environment, you're basically forced into playing as only one of them at all times, and in a co-op environment, your force stack is gonna have to rely on one player to make all actual progress. Everything about Funko Fusion's game design feels so confusing, like no one actually playtested it, and helping that confusion is the fact that some of these logical leaps you need to make to solve these puzzles feel straight up unsolvable without a guide. Which, by the way, shout out Pack Attack 04082, you're a lifesaver, bro. Funko Fusion has a very hands-off approach to its tutorials, which is to say there are barely any. You're just expected to walk into this room and see this and know that the solution to opening this door is to shoot through this crystal at the target. And maybe I'm just stupid, but this didn't feel readable to me. You see, in a Lego game, it's very easy to tell what's interactable and what's not because the stuff that's interactable is made out of Lego. But when everything looks kinda plasticky yet a little realistic, it's far less obvious, and Funko Fusion has no interest in smoothing that transition at all. Certain objects in the world that have never been interactable before will just suddenly become destructible for one level only to go back to never being noteworthy again in the game's runtime. There's no consistency to any of it. Although it's not like any consistency would really matter, because on top of all of this, Funko Fusion is just broken. Like, the game just doesn't work sometimes. Throughout my playthroughs, I got soft-locked 8 different times, having to restart the level from the beginning. Textures and models were routinely not working as intended, and on multiple occasions, I couldn't even boot into the game. It would just freeze on the initial loading screen. Even the basic settings are straight up broken. The first thing I did when I turned on the game was set the graphics to performance mode, turn off motion blur, and set aim assist to 100%. Yet there were still horrible performance drops, motion blur that made the game nauseating to look at times, and my terrible aim did not feel assisted in the slightest. I could ignore that last one, if not for the fact that weirdly precise shooting was a skill that I needed very frequently in my time with Funko Fusion. And like, listen, I play a lot of Fortnite, like more than any man should. Controller aiming is not new to me, so if I was finding this difficult to pull off, it's a problem. And if it's a problem for me, RV, the seasoned gamer, it's going to be a problem for the children you probably intended to be playing this game. And you know, looking at it that way, maybe I'm just being mean. Like, this is clearly a game for kids. I'm a grown man. I'm not the intended audience. There's no point in shitting on it. That's the thing. It's a game for kids. Except it's not. There's blood, swear words, political comedy, and imagery that I imagine would be very upsetting to someone more befitting of this simplistic gameplay. I know that the target audience for Funko Pops isn't children, and more so grown men with too much money and wives who sleep with other men, but I was very shocked to see how not child-friendly this game was. I feel almost clickbaited by it. Like, this was showcased in Nintendo Directs, and then I play it to discover that they barely astroturfed any of the body horror from The Thing. And even ignoring that, because let's be honest, kids these days are built pretty tough. What child has watched Hot Fuzz? The smattering of IPs chosen for Funko Fusion's main levels is just odd. Has anyone under the age of 90 watched Battlestar Galactica? Has anyone who wasn't gay and depressed in 2019 watched The Umbrella Academy? Has anyone watched Jurassic World Dominion? I cannot think of 7 more diametrically opposed franchises. Like, genuinely, is there anyone on Earth who is a fan of all of these? They've basically guaranteed that no matter what, an average playthrough is going to have at least a couple hours worth of game for a franchise you've never heard of, and it's not good enough at providing a window into these worlds to convert people into new fans. And that's not even mentioning that when I played this, most of these franchises were locked behind post-game shenanigans. You may have noticed that I've only been talking about the main 7 franchises when the marketing materials for the game showcase way more, and that's because up until recently, most of these guys were only discovered on a repeat playthrough. Which, credit where credit is due, the most fun I had in this game was doing a little bit of that post-game stuff, where you have all the tools unlocked and you don't have to deal with being railroaded into playing as specific characters. But after how unfun and terrible the base game was, I didn't have any proper motivation to try and find all the secrets. Most of what I would argue are the flashier IPs this game has on offer are secret levels that you will never interact with throughout the main campaign. And some of them don't even get that. For instance, Mega Man, he's only seen in optional side missions in different worlds. And it's like, damn, this game that was built from the ground up for people who just want to see their favorite characters on screen again is not even good at that. It's barely even a crossover. Most of these characters are localized entirely to their worlds, telling the same stories they've always told. Funko Fusion is an absolute failure in every possible way. And you might be thinking, since I've brought them up a couple times throughout the review, how exactly is this different from the LEGO games? Because LEGO games are also built on the backs of real-world licensing opportunities and advertising. LEGO games also flagrantly use other intellectual properties to boost their own name. And historically, LEGO games also have launched pretty broken on certain platforms. But the thing is, you play with LEGO. You don't play with Funko Pops. LEGO is an incentive to create. LEGO is fundamentally designed for kids to buy multiple sets and combine them into a big world of imagination. Every new set is compatible with each other, and every new set is a significant expansion to this world you've created. Even for the LEGO with an older intended audience, you have to play with it because you have to build it. And LEGO games are a personification of the act of playing with LEGO. The core gameplay loop is bringing new pieces to find new ways to play in old sets. Funko Pops are meant to sit on a shelf. Most Funko diehards don't even take them out of the box because it's easier to put more on a shelf that way. When you get a new Funko, the only thing it adds is another box in a stack of hundreds. On principle, trying to make a similar product out of these two things when the only thing they have in common is plastic and their use of licensed IPs is a fool's errand, and results in a laughably tonally dissonant final product. Like, yeah, Freddy Funko is so cool, he's not even the most iconic Freddy in this game. It may sound silly to have a favorite franchise licensing corporate plastic, but I do. And it's not Funko. At its core, LEGO is a medium of creation, but Funko Pops are just meant to resemble something you already like. And it's so fitting to me that LEGO's video game efforts are pioneers of a genre that holds a soft spot in the hearts of young gamers everywhere, and Funko's game is just trying to resemble that. Funko Fusion is a disaster in the truest sense of the word. Not only is it a shining example of the commercial cynicism that the Funko branding evokes, with endless advertisements and one of the most desperate attempts at leveraging IP that I have ever seen in gaming, but it's also just bad. But not even bad in an enjoyably silly way, bad in a boring way. The exact kind of soulless game for someone who shallowly refers to all forms of entertainment as just media. It's not a good crossover, it's not a good game, it's not even a good advertisement, considering I'm pretty sure I went from passively negative thoughts about Funko to actively hating the brand through this experience. It's not hopeless for Funko Fusion. Since I initially played the game, there have been updates that address things like enemy counts and having to replay levels, and I have to admit, it's really nice seeing devs that seem to really care about this game that otherwise seems like licensed shovelware. So to the folks over at 1010 Games, I wish you the best of luck in reshaping this game into something you're proud of. And while I'm at it, thank you for the review copy. I hope you're not too discouraged by your debut title being miserable. It's clear that you have some talented people working behind the scenes, so I look forward to seeing what comes from you next. And to my audience, I hope you enjoyed my suffering, and until next time, I want to play a good game, like, oh shit, the new Zelda's out, and I've been playing Funko Fusion? Yeah, I'm gonna go play Zelda now. See ya!